The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest room Taeho had ever stood in. The ceiling rose so high that clouds formed near the top. Thousands of seats circled the central platform where he stood alone. Representatives from 47 species watched him with eyes of every color and shape. Some had fur. Some had scales. Some had no bodies at all. Just floating lights that spoke through machines. Taeho was human. He was 53 years old with gray hair at his temples and calm brown eyes that never showed anger. He had served as humanity's ambassador for 15 years. He had learned to be patient. He had learned to smile when others laughed at him. Today, he hoped, all that patience would finally pay off. Behind him stood his small team. Yuna, his advisor, kept her hands folded in front of her. She was younger than Taeho but twice as sharp. Beside her stood Do-hyun, barely 25, holding a recording device. His job was to document everything for human archives. His hands were shaking slightly. This was his first time in the Grand Chamber. Taeho cleared his throat and began to speak. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," he said. 200 years ago, humanity joined this body as a provisional member. We were called a developing species. We were told we needed to prove ourselves before we could have equal voice. He paused and looked around the chamber. Most of the representatives were not paying attention. Some were talking to each other. Others were looking at their personal screens. Taeho continued anyway. In those 200 years, human engineers have designed power systems for 64 stations across Council space. Human doctors have cured 11 plagues that threaten member worlds. Human soldiers have served as peacekeepers in 30 wars, asking nothing in return except the chance to help. He took a breath. This was the moment he had worked toward for his entire career. Today, I formally request that humanity be granted full membership with equal voting rights. We have proven ourselves. We have given everything we have. We ask only to be treated as equals. Taeho stopped speaking and waited. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a sound came from the highest seat in the chamber. It was laughter. Deep, rumbling laughter that echoed off the walls. High Speaker Veltorak leaned forward in his seat. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on his face. He had led the council for 60 years. No one had ever challenged him and won. "Ambassador Taeho," Veltorak said, still chuckling. "Your species is barely out of its cradle. 300 years ago, you were still killing each other with metal tubes that threw small pieces of lead, and now you want to sit among the elders of the galaxy." Laughter spread through the chamber. Species that humanity had saved from disease laughed. Species that humanity had protected from invasion laughed. They laughed because Veltorak was laughing, and no one wanted to be on the wrong side of the High Speaker. Do-hyun's face went red with anger. He took a step forward, but Yuna grabbed his arm and held him back. Her grip was iron. "Your contributions are noted," Veltorak continued, waving his thin hand dismissively. "They are quaint, useful, even. But the Council has stood for 12,000 years. Humanity has been in space for barely 3 centuries. Come back in another millennium, and perhaps we will consider your request again." More laughter, louder now. Taeho stood perfectly still. His face showed nothing. Yuna watched him carefully, knowing that behind those calm eyes, a decision was being made. A decision that would change everything. "I call for a vote," Taeho said quietly. "As is my right under council law." Veltorak shrugged. "Very well. Let the record show that humanity has requested full membership. All in favor?" Silence. Not a single light appeared on the voting board. "All opposed?" The board lit up like a night sky. 46 species voted against humanity. Only one abstained. Kira Ven, the representative from the neutral worlds, kept her light dark. She sat in her seat with her head bowed, unable to look at Taeho. "The motion fails," Veltorak announced. "Humanity will remain a provisional member. This matter is closed." Taeho nodded slowly. He did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He did not beg or threaten or make speeches about fairness. He simply turned to his team and gestured for them to gather their things. Yuna picked up her documents. Do-hyun, his hands now steady with cold fury, stopped his recording. They walked toward Tejo and stood beside him. "Ambassador," Veltorak called out, his voice dripping with false kindness. "You are not dismissed. We have other matters to discuss. The engineering project on Station 12 requires human oversight, and there is a medical emergency on Ceres 4th that needs your doctors." Tejo stopped walking. He turned back to face the high speaker. When he spoke, his voice was soft. So soft that the chamber had to fall silent to hear him. "Then we will take our leave." Veltorak blinked all four of his eyes. "Excuse me, we will take our leave," Tejo repeated. "From Station 12. From Ceres 4th. From all council matters. Humanity withdraws." A murmur ran through the chamber. Veltorak laughed again. But this time it sounded forced. "You cannot simply leave. You have obligations, contracts, agreements, signed by your own government." "We had an agreement," Tejo said. "We would serve. We would help. We would prove ourselves. And in return, we would be treated with respect. You have broken that agreement today, so we will honor it no longer." He turned and walked toward the exit. Yuna and Dohyun followed. Their footsteps echoed in the sudden silence of the grand chamber. "You will regret this," Veltorak called after them. "The galaxy does not need humanity. We existed for thousands of years before you crawled out of your caves. We will exist for thousands more after you are forgotten." Tejo did not turn around. He did not respond. He simply walked through the great doors of the chamber and let them close behind him. Outside, in the cold hallway of Palak Station, Dohyun finally spoke. "Sir, what just happened? What are we going to do?" Tejo looked at his young officer. For the first time that day, he allowed himself a small, sad smile. "We are going to do what humans have always done when we are not wanted," he said. "We are going to leave. Quietly. Completely. And we are never going to come back." Yuna nodded. Her eyes were hard as stone. "They think they do not need us," she said. "They will learn." The three humans walked down the hallway toward the docking bay, where their ship waited. Behind them, the grand chamber buzzed with conversation. Already, the council was forgetting them. Already, they were moving on to other business. They had no idea what they had just done. They had no idea what was coming. The message went out at midnight, Earth Standard Time. It traveled through quantum channels to every human ship, station, colony, and outpost in council space. The message was short. It contained only 3 words. "Come home now." Within 1 hour, every human in the galaxy knew what had happened. Within 2 hours, they began to move. Hana was chief engineer on Station 12 when the message arrived. She was 41 years old with short black hair and hands covered in small scars from years of working with machines. She had spent 8 years on this station, keeping its power systems running, fixing problems that alien engineers could not solve, and training local workers who never seemed to learn. She read the message 3 times. Then she put down her tools and walked to the main control room. Her alien supervisor, a large creature covered in brown fur, looked up from his desk. "Engineer Hana, where are you going?" "The secondary reactor needs maintenance." "I am leaving," Hana said simply. The supervisor laughed. "Leaving? You cannot leave. We have contracts. Deadlines. The station administrator will never approve it." Hana pulled out her personal computer and showed him a document. "This is my resignation. It is effective immediately. Under galactic labor law, you cannot force me to stay." The supervisor's laughter died. "But the reactor? Only you know how to fix it." "Yes," Hana agreed. "Only I do." She walked out of the control room without looking back. Behind her, she heard the supervisor calling for security. She did not care. By the time they organized themselves, she would be on a ship, heading for human space. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out thousands of times. On the medical world of Ceres IV, human doctors packed their equipment and said goodbye to patients they had treated for years. When hospital administrators demanded they stay, they showed their resignations and walked away. On the trade stations of the Outer Ring, human merchants closed their shops and canceled their contracts. They sold nothing. They bought nothing. They simply left. On military bases throughout council space, Human advisors deleted their personal files and handed over their access cards. They left behind manuals and training documents. But they took something more valuable. They took their experience, their knowledge, and their willingness to help. Minho oversaw the military withdrawal from his ship, the Quiet Dawn. He was 58 years old with a face like carved stone and eyes that had seen too many wars. He had trained alien soldiers for 20 years. He had led them into battle. He had watched them die. And through it all, he had believed that his sacrifice meant something. Now he knew better. "Sir, the Council is demanding we stay," his communications officer reported. "They are threatening sanctions." "What sanctions?" Minho asked calmly. "We are already leaving. What more can they do to us?" The officer had no answer. Minho opened a channel to all human military personnel in Council space. "This is Defense Coordinator Minho. You have all received the recall order. Do not argue with your hosts. Do not explain. Do not apologize. Simply leave. Any human who wishes to stay is free to do so, but they will no longer be part of our community. The time for helping those who do not want us has ended." He closed the channel and leaned back in his chair. Through the window, he could see alien ships scrambling to intercept human vessels. They were too slow. Humans had always been faster than they expected. Back on Palak Station, Tejo sent his final official message to the Galactic Council. He wrote it himself, choosing each word carefully. "To the honored members of the Galactic Council, humanity withdraws its services, trade agreements, and mutual defense obligations effective immediately. All human personnel will return to human space within 30 standard days. All human technology currently in use by Council members will be transferred to local control. We will not disable or sabotage any systems. We simply will no longer maintain them. We wish the Council prosperity and long life." He signed his name and sent the message. Then he began packing his office. Yuna entered without knocking. Her face was pale but determined. "The neutral world's representative wants to speak with you," she said. "Kira Ven." She abstained from the vote. Tejo paused. "What does she want?" "She wants to know what it would take for humanity to stay." Tejo thought for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "Tell her we wanted respect. Now we want nothing." Yuna nodded and left to deliver the message. The withdrawal continued for 29 days. It was orderly. It was peaceful. There was no violence. There were no angry crowds. Humans simply packed their belongings, said polite goodbyes, and left. The Council watched with growing unease. They had expected threats. They had expected demands. They had expected humans to beg for another chance. Instead, they got silence. Veltorak addressed the Council on the 30th day. "The human withdrawal is nearly complete," he announced. "Good riddance, I say. They were always too emotional, too unpredictable. The galaxy will run more smoothly without them." Some representatives nodded in agreement. Others looked uncertain. Mira Solis, the Council's economic minister, stared at her data screen with worried eyes. The numbers she was seeing did not look good. "High Speaker," she said carefully, "perhaps we should discuss the economic impact of this withdrawal. Human trade represented a significant portion of our neutral commerce, and many of our systems rely on human engineering." "Rely is a strong word," Veltorak replied. "We use their services because they were cheap and available. We will find replacements. With respect, High Speaker, some of their medical formulas are patented. Some of their engineering solutions are unique. We may not be able to find replacements quickly." Veltorak waved his hand dismissively. "Then we will figure it out ourselves. We are the Galactic Council. We built empires when humans were still learning to make fire. We do not need them." The chamber fell silent. No one wanted to argue with the High Speaker. In the outer systems, the last human ships gathered at the border of human-controlled space. Thousands of vessels of every size formed a great convoy heading home. Tejo watched from the bridge of his diplomatic cruiser as they crossed into human territory. Do-hyun stood beside him. The young man had aged 10 years and 30 days. He had seen things that changed him forever. "Will we ever go back?" Do-hyun asked. Tejo did not answer immediately. He watched the stars for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Perhaps someday, when they understand what they have lost." when they are ready to treat us as equals, not as servants. And if that day never comes, Tejo smiled his sad smile, then we will build our own future. We have always been good at that. Behind them, the border closed. Human space went dark to council sensors. The great silence had begun. In the grand chamber, the council celebrated. They held feasts and gave speeches about their glorious independence from the troublesome humans. They congratulated themselves on finally being free. They did not know that the clock had started ticking. They did not know that everything they had built was about to fall apart. The humans had left quietly, and quiet, they would soon learn, was the most dangerous sound of all. The first sign of trouble came 6 weeks after the humans left. It started small, the way all disasters start. On Station 12, a warning light began blinking in the secondary reactor room. The alien technicians looked at it with confusion. They had never seen this particular light before. They checked their manuals, but the manuals only said to contact the human engineering team for assistance. There was no human engineering team anymore. They tried to fix the problem themselves. They pushed buttons. They adjusted settings. They did everything they could think of. The warning light kept blinking. Then it turned red. 3 days later, the secondary reactor failed. It did not explode. It simply stopped working. Half the station lost power. Life support systems struggled. Thousands of residents were evacuated to the remaining sections while engineers tried desperately to understand technology they had never bothered to learn. The station administrator sent a message to the council. We need human engineers. Our reactor has failed. We cannot repair it. The council's response was firm. Handle it locally. We will not beg the humans to return. Station 12 remained at half power for 4 months. 17 people died from system failures during that time. No one talked about it publicly. On Ceres IV, the agricultural world, things were much worse. A plague had been spreading through the farms for years. Human doctors had kept it controlled with a special medicine they developed. The medicine was not complicated to make, but it required a specific process that only the humans understood. They had shared the formula freely, but they had never taught anyone the exact method of production. Without the medicine, the plague spread. Crops died. Animals died. Within 3 months, the food supply of Ceres IV dropped by 40%. Within 6 months, people began to starve. Mira Solis presented her first emergency report to the council. Her voice shook as she read the numbers. 17 species are reporting food shortages. Trade routes have collapsed because human merchants were the only neutral parties that all species trusted. Border conflicts have increased by 300%, and our early warning defense systems are failing. Veltorak sat in his high seat, his 4 eyes narrowed with irritation. These are temporary problems, he said. We are simply adjusting to a new normal. High Speaker. With respect, these problems are getting worse, not better. The humans did not just provide services, they provided connections. They were the glue that held different parts of our society together. Without them, everything is coming apart. Then we will find new glue. Veltorak snapped. The council has survived for 12,000 years. We will survive this. But surviving was exactly what they were failing to do. In the outer territories, pirate fleets grew bold. For decades, human peacekeepers had patrolled the dangerous regions between species territories. They had been neutral, respected by all sides, feared by none. Pirates avoided them because attacking a human ship meant bringing the entire human community down on your head. Now the humans were gone, and no one filled the gap. A pirate coalition formed in the lawless zones. They started with small raids on cargo ships. When no one stopped them, they grew bolder. They attacked larger ships. They captured stations. They demanded tribute from merchant vessels. The council sent its own fleet to stop them. But the fleet was slow and poorly coordinated. Different species refused to take orders from each other. Old rivalries surfaced. Ships that were supposed to work together ended up fighting each other instead of the pirates. The pirates won 3 major battles in a row. They captured an entire star system and declared it their own territory. Dax Oren, fleet commander of the Unified Armada, stood before the council with a bloody bandage on his arm. He had led the last battle himself and barely escaped with his life. "We cannot win this war," he said bluntly. "Our forces are divided. Our systems are failing. Half my ships cannot communicate with each other because the translation software was designed by humans and no one else knows how to maintain it. Then find someone who does," Veltorak ordered. "I have tried. There is no one." The humans designed systems that only humans understood, not because they were hiding anything, but because no one else cared enough to learn. The chamber fell silent. For the first time, representatives began to whisper among themselves. For the first time, doubt crept into their eyes. Mira Solis worked through the night, analyzing data that painted a terrifying picture. She traced every system that humans had touched, every service they had provided, every problem they had quietly solved without asking for thanks. The list was endless: power systems, medical research, trade negotiations, peace agreements, translation services, navigation charts, communication protocols, food distribution, waste management, emergency response, education programs, scientific research. Humans had been everywhere, doing everything, asking for nothing except the chance to be helpful, and no one had noticed. No one had said thank you. No one had even seen them, until now. Mira requested a private meeting with Veltorak. She showed him her research. She showed him the projections. She showed him what would happen if nothing changed. "Within 2 years, the council will collapse," she said. "Not because of war, not because of invasion, but because the things that held us together are gone, and we have nothing to replace them with." Veltorak stared at the data for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. "This cannot be right. They were just humans. A young species. A primitive species. They could not have been this important." "They were not important," Mira said. "That is exactly the problem. We treated them as unimportant. We used their help and gave them nothing in return. We laughed at them in public and depended on them in private, and when they finally asked for the one thing they wanted, we laughed again. So they left. We will make them come back," Veltorak said. "We will offer them rewards. Contracts. Money." Mira shook her head. "I do not think they will accept. They did not leave because they wanted more money. They left because we hurt them, and hurt is not something you can buy your way out of." Veltorak slammed his hand on the table. "Then what do you suggest?" "I suggest we apologize. Publicly. Completely. And we offer them what they originally asked for. Full membership. Equal rights. A real voice in the council." "Never," Veltorak hissed. "I will not apologize to primitives. I will not lower the dignity of this council." Mira stood up slowly. She looked at the high speaker with eyes that held no more fear. "Then the council will fall. And when historians write about how the greatest civilization in the galaxy destroyed itself, they will write one sentence at the end. They will write, 'The humans tried to help.'" The council said no. She walked out of the room without waiting to be dismissed. Behind her, Veltorak sat alone in the darkness, surrounded by data that showed his empire crumbling. He had been so sure of himself, so confident in his power, so certain that he did not need the quiet people who had given everything and asked for so little. Now he was watching everything fall apart, and somewhere in the darkness of human space, the lights were still on. The humans were not suffering. They were not struggling. They were not falling apart. They were waiting. 1 year after the humans walked away, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. It was not called an emergency session publicly. Officially, it was called a special review of current affairs. But everyone knew the truth. The galaxy was falling apart, and no one knew how to stop it. The Grand Chamber, once filled with laughter and pride, was now heavy with fear. Representatives sat in their seats with dark circles under their eyes. Many had not slept properly in months. Their worlds were burning, and they had no water to put out the flames. Veltorak stood at the center podium. He had aged 20 years in 12 months. His blue skin had faded to a sickly gray. His 4 eyes no longer sparkled with confidence. He looked like a man who had seen his own death coming and could not run fast enough. "The situation is critical," he admitted. The pirate coalition has taken 7 star systems. Trade has collapsed by 60%. 32 member species are facing economic disaster. Food shortages affect half the council worlds, and our defense systems continue to fail. He paused. The chamber was completely silent. We have tried everything. We have hired new engineers. We have trained new doctors. We have built new ships. Nothing works. The systems the humans designed are too complex for us to maintain. The connections they built are too delicate for us to repair. Mira Solis stepped forward. She had been preparing for this moment for months. There is only one solution, she said. We must ask the humans to return. The chamber erupted in angry shouts. Representatives who had lost worlds to pirates demanded revenge instead of reconciliation. Representatives who had lost face by supporting the original vote against humanity refused to admit they were wrong. It took 10 minutes for order to be restored. I will not beg, Vel Torak said firmly. But I will negotiate. Fleet Commander Dax Oren will lead a diplomatic mission to the human border. He will offer trade concessions, limited voting rights, anything reasonable to bring them back. Dax Oren stood at attention near the back of the chamber. He was a soldier, not a diplomat. But he understood why he had been chosen. He was one of the few council leaders who had always respected humans. He had fought beside them. He had seen their courage and their skill. If anyone could convince them to return, it was him. I will do my best, Dax said simply, but I make no promises. The humans are not stupid. They know exactly what they are worth now. 3 weeks later, Dax's fleet arrived at the border of human space. It was the largest diplomatic mission in council history. 50 ships, 2,000 crew members, enough gifts and promises to fill a small moon. But when they reached the border, they found only one human ship waiting for them. A small patrol vessel, barely bigger than a shuttle. It hung in space like a single star against the darkness. Dax opened a communication channel. This is Fleet Commander Dax Oren of the Unified Armada. I come on behalf of the Galactic Council to request a meeting with human leadership. There was a long pause. Then a familiar face appeared on the screen. Minho, the defense coordinator who had recalled all human military forces 1 year ago. His stone face showed no emotion. Commander Dax, Minho said. It has been a long time. Too long, old friend. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. We are not friends, Minho replied calmly. We were colleagues. There is a difference. Friends do not watch their friends be humiliated and say nothing. Dax felt the words like a punch to his stomach. He had been in the Grand Chamber that day. He had heard the laughter. He had said nothing because he was afraid. He had stayed silent because silence was safe. Now silence was killing his people. You are right, Dax admitted. I should have spoken. I should have defended you. I was a coward. And I am sorry. Minho nodded slightly. Your apology is noted, but it changes nothing. What do you want? The Council wishes to negotiate your return. We are prepared to offer generous terms, trade agreements, technology sharing, even limited voting rights in the Council. Limited, Minho repeated. Interesting word choice. It is a starting point. Everything is negotiable. Minho was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was even colder than before. Commander, the Council had 200 years to negotiate with us. They chose to laugh instead. They chose to take our help and give us nothing. They chose to treat us like servants and then act surprised when we stopped serving. I understand, Dax said. But surely, there must be something we can offer. Something you want. There is nothing you can offer. Not anymore. Dax leaned forward. Please. Billions of lives depend on this. Children are starving. Hospitals are failing. Wars are breaking out everywhere. Whatever we did wrong, the innocent should not suffer for it. Minho's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. Pain, perhaps, or memory. You speak of innocent suffering, he said slowly. Do you know how many human doctors died during the plague on Ceres 4th 20 years ago? They went to help, even though the local government treated them like animals. 43 human doctors gave their lives to save strangers who never even learned their names. The Council did not even send condolences. 43, Tennel sent. Dax had no response. Do you know how many human engineers died building Station 12? The station your council celebrated as a triumph of galactic cooperation? 67. They worked in dangerous conditions because alien contractors refused to share the safe jobs with primitives. The council gave medals to the alien supervisors. The human names were not even mentioned. I did not know. Dax whispered. No one knew. Because no one cared to learn. Minho straightened in his chair. Commander, I respect you. You are an honest warrior. So I will be honest with you. Humanity is not coming back. Never. Not to the council. We have built our own networks now. Our own alliances. Our own future. The neutral worlds have joined us. So have several species that left the council after we did. We are growing stronger every day, while your council grows weaker. Dax felt hope slipping away. Is there nothing I can tell my leaders? No message at all? Minho thought for a long moment. Tell them this. Humanity does not hate the council. We do not wish them destroyed. We simply no longer believe that helping them will make any difference. We gave everything for 200 years, and in return, we received nothing but contempt. We will not make that mistake again, and if the council changes, if they truly become better, then perhaps, someday, we can have a different conversation. But change must come first. Real change. Not promises made in desperation and forgotten when the crisis passes. The council must become worthy of our help before we will give it again. The communication channel closed. Minho's ship turned and disappeared into the darkness of human space. Dax sat in silence for a long time. His officers watched him nervously, waiting for orders. Finally, he spoke. Take us home. The mission has failed. Sir, should we not try again? Perhaps with different terms? There are no terms they will accept. They do not want our money. They do not want our power. They wanted only one thing, and we refused to give it. Now it is too late. What did they want, sir? Dax closed his eyes. Respect, he said softly. They wanted us to treat them as equals. That was all, and we could not bring ourselves to do it. The fleet turned around and began the long journey back to council space. Behind them, the human border remained dark and silent. The council had sent its best negotiator, its most trusted warrior, its most generous offers, and the humans had simply said no. Not with anger, not with threats, not with demands, just no. And that simple word was more devastating than any weapon could ever be. 5 years had passed since the humans walked away from the Grand Chamber. The galaxy was a very different place now. The Galactic Council, once a unified body of 47 species, had shattered into 3 separate factions. The largest faction called itself the Restoration Alliance, and was led by Mira Solis. They believed in reform, in change, in admitting their mistakes. They controlled 15 worlds and struggled every day just to keep their people fed. The second faction called itself the True Council. They believed nothing was wrong with the old ways. They blamed everyone except themselves for the collapse. They controlled 12 worlds and spent more time fighting internal power struggles than solving actual problems. The third faction had no name. They were simply the Lost Ones. Species that had given up on politics entirely. They wandered between stars, looking for new homes, trying to forget the glory they had once known. Veltorak was no longer High Speaker. He had been removed from power 2 years after the human departure. When food riots broke out on Palax Prime itself, the representatives who had once laughed at his jokes now blamed him for everything. He was exiled to a small moon on the edge of council space, where he lived alone, surrounded by data screens that showed him how completely he had failed. No one visited him. No one sent messages. He had become what he had feared most. He had become unimportant. Meanwhile, humanity flourished. Tejo, the ambassador who had led his people out of the Grand Chamber 5 years ago, now served as the elected leader of the human coalition. It was a new government, built from scratch, designed to avoid the mistakes of the past. Every species in the coalition had equal voting rights. Every voice mattered. Every contribution was recognized. The coalition had grown beyond anyone's expectations. The neutral worlds, led by Kira Ven, had joined within the first year. They were followed by 7 species who had left the council after watching how humanity was treated. More were considering joining every day. Hana had become the chief engineer of the entire coalition. Her teams designed new power systems that were better than anything the council had ever built. More importantly, they taught everyone how the systems worked. No more secrets, no more knowledge hoarded by one group. Technology belonged to everyone. Minho led the coalition defense forces. They did not call themselves an army. They called themselves peacekeepers. Their job was not to conquer but to protect. They patrolled the borders, stopped pirates, and helped anyone who asked for help, even former council species. Even those who had once laughed at them, because humans, it turned out, could not stop being helpful. It was simply who they were. Yuna had retired from diplomacy. At 73 years old, she spent her days teaching young people about history, about the mistakes of the past, about the importance of dignity and respect. Her classes were always full. On the 5th anniversary of the departure, she gave a speech at a coalition summit. Representatives from 20 species listened as she spoke. 5 years ago, she said, her voice still strong despite her age. We stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council and asked for one simple thing. We asked to be treated as equals. We asked for the respect we had earned through 2 centuries of service. She paused, looking out at the assembled faces. Humans sat beside aliens. Former enemies shared tables and meals. The room was proof that different species could work together without arrogance or contempt. They laughed at us. They told us to wait another 1,000 years. They told us we were nothing. Her voice grew quieter, but no one had trouble hearing her. We could have fought back. We could have destroyed their stations. We could have taken revenge for every insult, every injury, every ignored sacrifice. Some wanted us to do exactly that. She shook her head slowly. But we chose differently. We chose to walk away. Quietly, peacefully. We chose to build instead of destroy, to create instead of conquer, to prove our worth not through violence, but through success. She gestured at the room around her. Look at what we have built. 20 species working together in harmony. Trade routes that benefit everyone equally. Technology shared freely. Peace maintained through mutual respect, not through fear. Her eyes found Do-hyun in the crowd. He was 40 now, an ambassador himself, no longer the shaking young man who had witnessed the humiliation in the grand chamber. They thought our silence was weakness, Yuna said. They thought our patience was submission. They never understood that humans do not rage. We remember, and we build. The room erupted in applause. Not just from humans, but from every species present. After the speech, Do-hyun returned to his office. He had a stack of messages waiting for him. Trade proposals, alliance requests, science collaboration invitations. The coalition was busier than ever. One message stood out from the others. It came from the Restoration Alliance, from the remnants of the old council. It was marked urgent. Do-hyun opened it and read the words carefully. Ambassador Do-hyun, on behalf of the Restoration Alliance and the surviving members of the former Galactic Council, I am authorized to formally request reconciliation with the human coalition. We acknowledge that grievous wrongs were done to humanity. We acknowledge that our arrogance caused suffering for all. We humbly ask for the opportunity to earn your forgiveness and, in time, your friendship. Signed, Mira Solis, Chancellor of the Restoration Alliance. Do-hyun read the message 3 times. Then he sat in silence, thinking about the past 5 years, thinking about everything humanity had endured, everything they had built. He remembered Taeho's calm voice in the grand chamber. He remembered Yuna's iron grip on his arm. He remembered the long walk out of the room while laughter echoed behind them. He began typing his response. He wrote carefully, choosing each word the way Taeho had taught him. Chancellor Solis, thank you for your message. Humanity does not hold grudges. The past cannot be changed. But we no longer hold doors open for those who slammed them in our faces. He paused, thinking of all the council species who were still suffering, thinking of the children who had never asked to be born into a failing civilization, thinking of the doctors and engineers and workers who had nothing to do with the decisions of their leaders. He continued writing. However, we believe in second chances. We believe that people can change. We believe that even those who have done wrong deserve the opportunity to do better. Therefore, we offer the following. The Restoration Alliance may apply for observer status. In the Human Coalition, you will not have voting rights. You will not have special privileges. You will be treated exactly as we were treated for 200 years. You will have to prove yourselves. You will have to earn your place. It will be difficult. It will be humbling. Many of your people will complain that it is unfair, but it is exactly what was asked of us, and we did it. For 2 centuries, we did it. If you truly wish to change, you will do it too. He signed his name and sent the message. Then he walked to the window of his office and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the council was still struggling, still falling apart, still learning the price of arrogance. And somewhere out there, humans were still building, still growing, still becoming more than anyone had ever expected. They had walked away in quiet, and the galaxy would never be the same. Do-hyun smiled to himself and returned to his work. There was always more to do, more people to help, more problems to solve, more futures to build. That was what humans did. That was who they were, and no amount of laughter could ever take that away.